Hello, this presentation is about successful interviewing and interviewing tips, brought to you by the University of Maine Career Center, located on the third floor of the Memorial Union, reachable by phone, and with a variety of resources available online at umaine.edu/career. Before we get started, just want to highlight a few select Career Center services. Notably, if you haven't already, be sure to register with the Career Center by using CareerLink. This is an individualized account where we post jobs, internships, where you can identify employers in our employer database, as well as other resources by signing in with your @maine.edu email address. We also offer career counseling and job search advising, resume and cover letter critiques, and specific to this topic, mock interviews, where we will interview you as if you are a stranger and run you through the process, or just interview coaching, which is another type of appointment you can make, which is somewhat less intimidating if you're new to interviewing, where we talk about the process and some strategies on answering questions and making you feel prepared for the interview process. So what is the interview? Firstly, you want to prepare for an interview by doing some pre-planning. You want to pre-plan your attire, review your resume, your experiences, create what I call an experience bank. So these are all the things you've done in your life that might come up in an interview, some specific situations or scenarios you can talk about. And you definitely want to prepare by learning more about the organization that you're going in to interview at. Some overall strategies would be, relax and smile, to be yourself, to always provide specific examples to support your responses, using a specific formula to answer questions such as the SAR approach, situation, action, result, which we'll talk more about in a bit. Making sure that you're doing your homework, really understanding what the position is in the organization you're interviewing at, and ultimately to demonstrate your passion for the position. You should go into an interview with somewhat of a thesis statement or something that you're going to continually go back to and always show support. And typically that is, I am the right person for this job and we are a good fit because, and you want to make sure that you reiterate that throughout your interview experience, however that may manifest. Interviews always start with an introduction, and this is great words to live by. You never get a second chance to make a first impression. Employers form a first impression of the candidate in less than a minute, so you want to make sure that you're prepared to make a strong introduction, make eye contact, have a strong handshake, and present yourself well, because the first impression is going to affect the rest of the interview. Some things to keep in mind during the introduction process of an interview there are a lot of nonverbal factors that come into play. These are things like showing up on time, if not early, so being punctual, your apparel, how you present yourself, clothing-wise, how well you're groomed, the handshake, eye contact that I mentioned, having a confident posture and an appropriate expression that shows that you're relaxed and confident. Some verbal factors would be your ability to carry on an informal conversation. This is small talk. Your grammar and word usage are professional in nature and appropriate for the setting, and that your voice sounds confident and self-assured. After the introduction would be answering interviewer questions, typically. So you want to be prepared to talk about yourself. This could be easy or it could be difficult for some people. This is something that takes experience and preparation for, right? So when you're talking about yourself, you want to highlight all of your experiences, your accomplishments, skills, goals, and values, and knowing your strengths and being prepared to back those up with specific examples. There are a couple of different types of interview questions, or two categories I think of in regard to interview questions, and one of those are behavioral-based questions. Behavioral-based questions start a certain way and want a specific example, and we'll look at some different questions here in a minute. But many employers are going to ask these, and they want to see how you behaved in the past situations. They're going to probe to get the details, and you need to be specific. The foundation of these behavioral interviews really are thinking about your job performance potential is based on your past experiences. Again, you want to use answers that show specific displays of your strength, and as mentioned before, using this formula to answer these questions by giving a situation, the action, the skill you used, what you did, and what the outcome was. So if you're always thinking about that formula, then you're going to have complete questions to these, or complete answers to these questions. These are some examples. Maybe you've heard some of these before if you've been in an interview situation. So for instance, tell me about a time when you disagreed with a supervisor. So you're going to want to create this or be able to recall a situation, talk about the action, the skill, what you did and what the outcome was. A couple of other examples here. How do you go about exercising leadership in that extracurricular activity that I can see here on your resume? Can you give me a specific example of when you offered extraordinary service to a customer? And similarly, another question might be, when have you felt a great deal of pressure and how do you deal with it? So reading through these questions, trying to think of a specific situation can be really challenging. So you want to make sure that you're preparing yourself to answer some basic questions such as strengths, weaknesses, leadership, your communication ability, when you've worked in a team, when you've worked individually. If you can create certain scenarios, then you probably can answer some of these questions that are going to be thrown your way and need to be backed up with some specific examples. So the other category of questions that might be asked, I just call, commonly asked questions, open-ended questions. These are things like, tell me about yourself. Why should we hire you? Why do you want this position? What are some of your strengths? What is your greatest weakness? Or what are some of your weaknesses? Why did you go to this college? What made you choose this industry or this major? What are your career goals? Where do you see yourself in 5 years? How are you at multitasking? Yeah, and you're going to want to use the same strategy, that situation, action, result, that SAR strategy for answering the behavioral-based questions, to answer these as well, because we always want to be giving specific examples that reflect our strengths. If we're doing that in an interview, we're showing the employer that we are a confident interviewer, we're confident in our skills and abilities and our past experiences, and we're going to be able to bring that to this new workplace should we be hired. And again, always revisit your common theme. Why am I good for this role? This is a good fit because. Anytime you can bring it back to that when you're answering questions, you're just going to really hammer down the point you're trying to get across. After questions are being asked to you, there's an opportunity for you to ask questions to the interviewer. This is a very important piece of interview preparation, making sure that you have questions to ask and that you're able to have a conversation. Because an interview is a conversation. It's to get to know you, it's all about you, but you want to make sure that you show interest in the employer by asking some questions here, typically at the end of an interview. Some strategies to really formulate and prepare some appropriate questions would be being up to date about the organization, industry happenings. You want to maybe ask about the position if it wasn't already clarified to you. What do you look for in somebody who does this job? Talk to me about the culture here in the workplace. What opportunities are there for me, to pursue additional education or training, or whether it be formal or informal leadership opportunities on the job. And pretty typically, you'd want to ask about the hiring process and be clear about the timeline moving forward. When can I expect to hear back? When are you looking to hire? When are you looking for somebody to start in this position? Those types of questions are good to ask in an interview process. Some things you definitely don't want to ask, and interviews can come in a number of ways. Sometimes there'll be multiple layers of interviewing, so like a first interview and then a second interview and then an on-site interview. But right off the bat, you're not going to want to ask questions about salary, so negotiating salary or pay, vacation, and asking about the health, retirement, and other benefits that may be offered in the position. If this information isn't provided to you up front, there will come a time before you accept a job offer where you'll be able to discuss these topics, but typically in an interview where you're getting to know each other, it really can reflect misplaced priorities. Just like an introduction, a strong closing is important, so there's time for either side to ask final questions. Again, make sure that you're identifying those next steps and express interest. If you really feel like this is a good fit, this is an opportunity that you still want to pursue, you want to make sure you close with that. A statement like, I've enjoyed this interview and I'm excited about the opportunity with this company. I really hope that I get to move forward in the process. Once you leave the interview, you're not done. A few strategies to really make yourself stand out as a strong candidate, and something that's very professional, would be to follow up, to write a thank you note. The art of thank you note writing isn't dead. I would encourage you to have a handwritten note to anybody who was a part of your interview process. If you feel like you left any information out when you were answering questions, be sure to include that maybe in the card. Some final thoughts that you have in reflecting about the interview. And again, reiterate your strengths and your enthusiasm, going back to kind of that statement that you wanted to keep going back to. If you're in a big job search, then you might want to keep a log, start some sort of spreadsheet document where you can record some highlights from the interview, who you spoke to, how you followed up, if you've heard back, where you are in their process, things like that, just to help you keep organized if you're undergoing a large job search. If the interviewer suggests any steps, maybe go ahead and get a hold of somebody else, or make sure you complete this assessment or this form. Make sure that you've actually followed through and that you're completing those steps, and stay in pursuit. Be persistent. Follow up if necessary. Make sure that they know your interests. If they told you they would have a decision at a certain date and it's past that date, it's appropriate to contact them and follow up. Some special situations that, or maybe some different formats of interviewing that we're seeing more and more. One would be a telephone interview. It's important that you find yourself in a setting that's distraction-free. You don't want interruptions. You want to make sure if you're on a mobile phone that the service won't be disrupted. You want to make sure you allow plenty of time. You don't want to be rushed. You want to be comfortable. And one nice thing about a telephone interview is you really can have quite a few notes at your fingertips, right? Similar if you were in an in-person interview, it's appropriate to have notes in front of you. But definitely with a telephone interview, you want to make sure that you have everything laid out and ready to go, and it's clear who will be calling who, if there's some sort of backup communication method. You just want to be prepared as possible when you're in a telephone interview situation. If you're close to Orono, we do have rooms that are available during business hours for you to reserve, where you could have a telephone interview, and similarly a video conferencing interview. Another special situation might be a group interview. Don't let this intimidate you, whether there are multiple candidates together or you're interviewing in front of a panel of multiple people. Don't be intimidated. Make sure that you're addressing everybody, that you are maintaining eye contact with everybody, and make sure to thank everybody as well. The thing with interviewing, there are no failures, just lessons. This is something that, interviewing is a skill that you will become more comfortable with the more you do it. You're going to learn from every interview, and for assistance or for specific questions, of course, don't hesitate to reach out to the Career Center for those resources. So thank you so much. Remember, we're located on the 3rd floor of the Union, by phone or email, open Monday through Friday, 8 to 4:30 during the academic year, as well as during breaks and summer break. Give us a call ahead of time to ensure that there's an appointment available for you. And again, lots of resources available on our website, umaine.edu/career. Thank you so much for listening, and good luck with your interviewing endeavors.